So on we go then with our 2017 review. It's time to talk about the silly season and politics and all that sort of stuff that happened throughout F1 in 2017. And I guess every year it's going to be, regardless of who moves where, it's always going to be pretty significant in the grand scheme of things. And while we didn't really have a lot of movement announced this year, there's been a lot of, I guess, there's been a few shuffles, a few moves that have been quite crucial when you look forward to the next few years and how things are going to pan out. So I guess the big one was Ferrari and locking in Sebastian Vettel until the end of 2019. There was a lot of conjecture about whether he would leave the team if he didn't win the championship, or he was going to go to Mercedes and partner Lewis Hamilton. But I guess what this move shows is that he's still got that faith in the team, and the team have the faith in him. And could we see a championship be yielded in this time?
Yeah, I guess that trajectory that Ferrari had with Schumacher there, they had their close calls and a few stumbles, just ironing out the idiosyncrasies of the fabled prancing horse there. You can see that they're very loath to let go of traditions, so if they can really just get themselves all around Vettel, now he's in that role that I guess Fernando Alonso had, where he's calling the shots, then as long as he's got the right motives, I think that they can make it work. He's the right man to lead them, but they just have to make sure they're all fighting for that one goal.
Well, that's the most important thing, and I guess we touched on it before that a lot of the issues this year weren't just down to Ferrari, but down to Vettel as a driver himself. And there was times this year where I questioned whether he had forgotten how to win. And this is a driver who was so successful, if you go back 4 or 5 years now, to when he was at Red Bull, winning 4 championships on the bounce and winning all those races from all those pole positions. So what's been, I guess, the biggest difference in the last couple of years with Ferrari? Is it just, it's not all car related, but it's just perhaps the pressure that's on him, the fact that he's chosen that, well, what people perceive as being following in Michael Schumacher's footsteps. I guess just saying that in itself carries a lot of expectation.
Yeah, I guess he sees him as Schumacher as his mentor, and as far back as Mexico 2016, that pressure was telling, that outburst he had at Charlie Whiting, so he's got that weight of the world on his shoulders, and I guess he was fairly circumspect this season. He acknowledged his own deficiencies as much as Ferrari's, and you could make that case that he really contributed to Ferrari having that little brain fade in that second half just through Azerbaijan and then ramping it up from Singapore. Ferrari just had no second guessing really. They just had to bite the bullet with upgrades, and they didn't work out, but they didn't have that luxury to fall back onto having a poor weekend. So Vettel knows he's just got to be clinical from the outset in 2018.
And whether he has the car there to produce the goods for him. He will have the same teammate, though, with Kimi Raikkonen being retained for another season. I guess we're going to go into every year and we're going to write so many articles, and there'll be a lot of conjecture around the future of Kimi Raikkonen, yet the outcome will always be the same. He gets a 1-year extension there at Ferrari. But when you look at it on the whole, it is, I guess, convenient for them. It's good for Sebastian Vettel. I guess Vettel would have a lot of input into who is his teammate there, and I guess to keep Seb happy, that's probably why they've kept Kimi there too, because for Seb, Kimi's the perfect rear gunner. He's not going to complain. They're good friends outside of the sport as well, so the way it's positioned, I guess, at the moment, Ferrari, is that it's clearly a one-man show, and Kimi to be there, he's got to be that rear gunner, and I guess staying on for another year. I mean, Kimi's the kind of person, if he wasn't motivated to race anymore, he wouldn't. Simple as that. I mean, he doesn't need more money as it is, you'd think, and he's got that young family now with him too, with two kids on hand, so Kimi wouldn't be doing it unless he's got the motivation, but you'd want him, we all want him to be getting results next year too, to justify his presence on the grid, or as you say, or as you keep repeatedly saying, that it would be nicer to have another young driver come in and through the doors at Ferrari.
Yeah, probably a bit of a rider for Vettel's recommitment there through 2020. Ostensibly, that's seeing that out, pending. It can always change in Formula One. You know that a contract is only as good as the piece of paper it's written on. So we'll see what happens there, but we assume that'll play out, and that's kept him happy for this. Probably 2019, you'd assume, unless there's a placeholder, and Leclerc's the long-term game from their end to succeed. I guess Vettel is the long-term hope. He'll have a couple of seasons at Sauber, so Raikkonen might be around beyond 2018 at that point. And we did say coming into this season we can see a victory for the Finn, but it never quite happened. He had a few chances, but Ferrari wouldn't let that happen, so it's hard to really say that we can expect it next season either.
Well, give that 1 year, I guess, to Grosjean, perhaps.
No.
You know, so he just gets that 1 year at Ferrari, whether he's successful there or not. Who knows? We'll see. But also locked in, I guess, for a mid-term deal. Wouldn't call it a long-term deal. Max Verstappen, I guess, and this is the big one as well, because Verstappen probably the hottest property as far as any silly season is concerned, and with him at that point, it's hard to even say this. The fact that he's at that point in his career is not even 20.
Oh, he is now.
Well, he
Just
is
turned
now.
20.
Well, he just turned 20.
Not legal in the US at least, still. So.
Well, what relevance does that have?
Oh, you know, if he had a won there this year, he probably would have been locked up if he had have been having the champers on the podium. So.
Well, you know, that's, I guess, I don't know what what that adds to my...
You've just been rendered speechless by that little pearl, haven't you? Just you never thought that one was coming. It's the big bamboozler.
Yeah, I'm just totally stunned by it. Thank you very much.
That's the end of the podcast.
While I regather my thoughts. Anyway, yeah, who would have thought we'd be saying that at this point in his career? Well, the fact is, Verstappen this year, he's found a bit of power, I guess you could say. The fact that, you know, he's got that leverage on his side that, you know, I can go anywhere and anyone would have me, basically. So Red Bull have to cater to me now for me to be able to stay. And I guess part of what you think of him staying there will be the fact that, you know, he might be favoured a bit more than Daniel Ricciardo, as unfortunate as that is. But yeah, it looks like with that deal for Verstappen to keep him there till the end of the decade, it looks like Red Bull might be catering the team towards him more so, and that's why we don't know about what's happening with Daniel Ricciardo's future.
Yeah, Ricciardo's admitted in the past couple of days that he's got to take his time to reflect on where he sees himself and play that longer game. I guess Red Bull's iterated that it's keen to keep him on its books, and it's a great combination. You can see when it comes together for both of them, they really bounce off each other well, and they've got that rapport off the track. So you can see that from that point of view, it'd make sense to continue with it. But Ricciardo's not stupid. He can see clearly the dynamic as far as favouritism, and probably he's seen his countryman there, his compatriot in Mark Webber, the way that he was treated with Sebastian Vettel in the other seat, and he doesn't want to go down that pathway. So if there is an opportunity, dare say that Ferrari door's looking pretty closed now with, as we keep saying, Leclerc. It could be Mercedes for 2019 that he's got his eyes on.
Well, it depends on the future of Red Bull itself. I mean, if Red Bull decide to leave the sport and it, dare we say, it become the Aston Martin racing team or whatever, how about Daniel holds it out until then? But then again, you know, age-wise, he isn't getting any younger, and I guess a few years ago he was one of those young drivers. Now he's moving in towards his 30s. So, you know, if you want him to win a championship, like, at the same time, as long as he wins one title, it'll be satisfying from a Aussie perspective, I guess. I mean, he could be one of those late bloomers like Nigel Mansell, not comparing the two in terms of how their career...
If that's the case, we've got to wait another 11 seasons for
well,
that
you know,
breakthrough, so good luck with that.
Who knows, yeah.
2029, world champion.
Oh, yeah, you know, whether we're here or not is another question. Anyway, but... yeah, for Ricciardo, I guess he's kept himself up there this year. He's, as we said earlier, the fact that we haven't really seen Verstappen and Ricciardo really go head to head because one of them races and the other one retires, or it's the other way around. So it'll be nice next year if both the cars are reliable. We get to see them both lock horns. Ricciardo all year has been the more respectable driver. The fact that every time he comes wheel to wheel with someone, he respects them completely, and it's so close yet so, what do you call it, you know, it's so respectful, it's so, what do you call it, there's no dirtiness to it at all. It's all very controlled and just it's in harmony. That's all I can say.
Yeah, they know their limits, and clearly Ricardo's probably got the most respect from his not his compatriots, but his competitors there. They know where he stands, and if there's a gap, they'll go for it. But they know within reason Ricardo will defend to the hilt, and that's one of the reasons we've seen such few occasions where he's come to blows with other cars there. He just so methodical about it. The last of the late breakers, he certainly is, and I think that on that front, you can see any given day he can just pull out a blinder, especially during those races. He might have a poor qualifying, but he tends to really get the most out of the car on a Sunday, and he just needs that reliability there. And I think that he's really still very much world champion material.
Yeah, so, it just depends whether it be 2029 or not, as you keep saying. Another guy, I guess, with a bit of pressure on him next year, we talked about it before, Valtteri Bottas, getting that one more season there at Mercedes next year, and it'll be crucial to his future. Whilst I would like to see him there long term for Mercedes, considering, we'd like to see him there long term. It just, I mean, unless something happens to Lewis Hamilton, as we've heard in the last few days, he's contemplating his future and all that in the sport. Bottas could be the one who's shown the door to let someone like a Ricciardo in, and that's why Bottas's results next year are going to be the things that speak for him. Unfortunately, as it is, it's a results-driven business, so it'll come down to that bottom dollar, I guess.
Yeah, I think for Bottas at least, he's made the most of what he's had for now, and he knows the stakes there. So the ball's in his court to perform, and fate could yet dictate that he remains and someone else is his partner from 2019. But there's a lot to play out. I guess that a silly season. At times it feels like there's going to be a big shake-up of the apple tree. I guess this year we thought it would be for 2018, and it was a holding pattern. So 2019 now looms as the real year where that transition does occur. So there could be, I don't know, at least half a dozen drivers exchanging places, perhaps more. So that's the real year. So probably June, July next season through till that end of the European season, August, September. It's going to be a lot of movers and shakers going around.
Well, at the same time, you've got those big names like Vettel and Verstappen already locked in, and you would have thought that they're the guys who would be moving at first given choice. But I guess, now between Ricciardo, Bottas, even Hamilton, what he does next is crucial.
Well, then you've got Ocon and all the
all the juniors as well who want to be able to come into those big teams. So we've, as you said before, Massa's gone, Button's gone now, Alonso, he's going to be another one. What does he do in the future? So, are we at a stage where we've got to start making room for these young guys and see them take those big seats, or do we see Lewis Hamilton continue to dominate the sport?
We're seeing it in supercars. It's happening, that changing of the guard into 2018. It's really a bit of a watershed to next season. We've probably got 4 or 5 fresh faces, and I guess for Formula One to herald a new era as part of Liberty, they would be keen to see that next generation come through before their time has passed them, as has probably been the case probably since the turn of the decade. There's almost been that influx of drivers who have come in when it's been too late to make a real impression. Otherwise, maybe they come in too soon. You see they're rushed through the system. So knowing the
Red Bull drivers, for example,
exactly the case in point. So I'd say that getting the timing right's still a big concern, but also just seeing that maybe one of the incumbents there has clearly reached the end of the line, and not having them stay on beyond their welcome and even tarnishing their own reputation. So it's a bit of a process between the current crop and the future to make sure that it's a natural evolution.
Natural evolution, yeah, but also just getting some new names up there as well. I mean, how long are we going to have the same? We haven't. Well, last year I guess we had our first new world champion in quite since Sebastian Vettel in 2010. So, whether we get a new world champion next year or it's a repeat one. We'll wait and see. But yeah, there's exciting times coming for the sport, and we'll talk a lot about that coming up when we talk about Liberty Media and the future of the sport and everything. But yeah, on the driver front, there's so many names out there that will do well. I mean, even look at Lando Norris, who's now shifted into a test driver role with McLaren, George Russell as well, who's people have got high hopes for. If Antonio Giovinazzi can make it into F1 as well, alongside or in opposition to Charles Leclerc, it'll be great to see too. So yeah, a lot to think about going into the future, and at the same time, it's quite sad to see young names like Dani Kvyat and Pascal Wehrlein drop out as well. I guess with Wehrlein not really doing much wrong to find himself outside the sport, it's just that Sauber had to keep Marcus Ericsson to please the investors, and then get that Ferrari junior driver in to appease the Ferrari side of the investment. So hopefully we see Wehrlein back in the sport sometime soon. But otherwise, he scored the points for Manor last year. He scored the points for Sauber this year, and he doesn't really get much in return for it.
Just shows how fickle F1 is. It doesn't rely on your deeds and where you might have placed your team for the future. It's almost the final consideration. There's always a greater bidder out there, and you've always probably almost got to be selfish. These drivers keep their options open because that window only stays open for such a finite time, and before you know it, you're frozen out, and it's very hard to come back in even after a season out. If you get to 2, then you're almost history, and you're best off looking at WEC, Formula E, whichever other category it might be.
Well, at least you've got those options out there now. Formula E's becoming bigger and bigger, and a lot of those drivers find themselves there. World Endurance Championship, I don't know now that the fact that the LMP1 class is going to has changed quite dramatically without those manufacturers present. So there are options over the world, but ultimately your goal and your dream is to be in Formula 1, isn't it? You don't think of, I want to be a Formula E driver, or, well, perhaps in the future. I'm sorry if, that's what people want to do, but, people still talk about Formula 1 as being the pinnacle, and that's where they want to reach. So, yeah, I guess for Wehrlein, it'd be great to see you back in a year's time if you can. It's sad too, Felipe Nasser. Now that Massa's gone, there's no Brazilian drivers on the grid for the first time in how long now? I don't know if you know.
40 years.
Sorry?
It's the mid-70s.
Yeah, so I thought you said 4 years. I'm
40
like,
years,
40 years, yeah.
Since Emerson Fittipaldi, it's been a mainstay.
Yeah,
and
whether it has an impact on the Brazilian Grand Prix itself as well, it'll be quite interesting to see. And then talking about circuits as well, Brazil could drop off. We've had Malaysia go this year, and yeah, silly season for circuits. Who's going to come in from 2019 onwards?
Yeah, a lot of talk. Liberty, it's US background there, an emphasis on the North American market, so they'll be looking at getting multiple events going there to cater to that demographic. And then even other circuits, probably less from that sphere that Bernie Ecclestone presided over, the oil-rich countries, where circuits perhaps from the past, such as we know Zandvoort and that allegiance to Max Verstappen, a really strong following being cultivated once more from the Netherlands, and South Africa's also been considered. So
Argentina in place of Brazil.
So it's good to see. I guess you got Austria. It's come back recently, getting and Paul Ricard for France is returning 2018 and biennial with Hockenheim making that time-honoured appearance. Now it's never permanent, but it's better than nothing. So the landscape in 3 years, in 5 years, could be vastly different to how we've known it really. Since, I guess, the 90s, it's been largely a very familiar schedule with a few alterations. It's always been largely the same structure throughout. So I think Liberty's really going to shake things up in the next few seasons.
Yeah, which will be good to see. So